Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Fakriya Hashim, and I would like to welcome you all to IKEA Festival. I'm going to be hosting Mona Eltahawy on a book chat of her new book, which she released this year. It goes by the name The 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls. Thank you, Mona, for gracing us with your presence. So I'd like to, give a summary of some of the, reviews that, I've gone through about the book that sort of summarizes everything in a sentence. And this is the most common review I've come across. So, The 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls is a bold and uncompromising feminist manifesto that shows women and girls how to defy, disrupt, and destroy the patriarchy by embracing the qualities they've been trained to avoid. So, a few weeks ago, what I did was I asked random people, about 6 people, what they think of, the 7 necessary sins for women and girls, people that hadn't read it. And, the reply I got, gave me an understanding of how, people have this preconceived notion of Mona. And the common reply I got from, these young people is that, she's trying to make, young girls stray from, the righteous path. They just heard sin, and, everyone is trying to sort of move back into their shells because it scares them. But yeah, I would like for you to give us, a brief about what, motivated you to write such a rage-filled, big fuck you to, patriarchy kind of manifesto.
Thank you, Fakriya. Before I start, I think I've been here enough times for you all to know how I begin all my talks. So after 3, we're going to say it together. 1, 2, 3, fuck the patriarchy! Thank you. Now I can begin. Okay, so, and also I want to thank Lola and the entire Arke Festival team. I feel that this is my home. I love returning to Arke. Thank you for all the incredible work you do. Thank you for this wonderful family that you have put together. I will always come back. So, about this book, and about the people who say Mona wants young girls to stray from the path. Yes, Mona does want young girls to stray from the path. Because the path is this. The path is what inspired me to write this book. So there were 2 events that happened in the space of 5 days in February of 2018. About February the 5th, I was at home. I write in my pajamas on the dinner table, very sexy. And I heard that there is a young woman in Pakistan called Sabika Khan. And she had posted on Facebook something that I was sadly very familiar with. She had been to Mecca, Islam's holiest site. You all know that I'm of Muslim descent. She had been to Mecca on pilgrimage, and she was sexually assaulted at Islam's holiest site. This is something that happened to me, and I've written about it many times before. Back in 1982, when I was 15 years old, and my family went on Hajj. Hajj, for those who don't know, is the Muslim pilgrimage. It's the 5th pillar of Islam. So imagine going to perform the 5th pillar of your religion at your religion's holiest place and being sexually assaulted. So I heard that this happened to Sabika, and I wanted to show solidarity for Sabika, but I also, and this is really important, I also wanted to create a space for women of Muslim descent in Me Too. Because Me Too was begun in 2006 by black feminist activist Tarana Burke. And at the end of 2017, several white actresses very bravely, I salute their courage, spoke out against Harvey Weinstein, but the media, in the US especially, made it seem like they launched this wonderful movement called Me Too. Me Too belongs to the marginalized. Me Too belongs to those who are not heard. Me Too belongs to those who are not rich, not white, and not famous. So I wanted to carve a place for Me Too for Muslim women. There was church too, because there were Christian women who had written about the abuse by priests, not just in the Catholic Church, but in the evangelical church too. So I created hashtag Mosque Me Too to support Sabika and also for Muslim women. And I asked Muslim women, or those who identify as of Muslim descent, who could speak, because not everyone can share these experiences, to write under hashtag Mosque Me Too what happened to them. Within a few hours, Indonesia, which is the world's biggest Muslim country, woke up and it made Mosque Me Too go viral. It was written about in Indonesian, in various Asian languages. It went to India, Pakistan, Europe, the Middle East, Turkey, all over the world. So this happened at the beginning of 1 week in February. I heard so many stories from so many Muslim women that were just like mine. I had forgotten how much being sexually assaulted twice at Islam's holiest site during the pilgrimage had broken me when I was 15 years old. I had buried it deep, deep inside. And hearing all those stories just broke it open again. So 5 days later, I wanted to take, we talk about self-care. My self-care is to dance. Now, imagine this. When I was 15 years old at Hajj, I was dressed from head to toe in what we call hijab. Only my face and my hands were showing. I was 15 years old, 1-5. In February of 2018, I'm now 50 years old, 5-0. I'm at the club in Montreal. I'm wearing a tank top and jeans, and I am dancing with my beloved because I'm trying to forget the fuckery of sexual assault at my religion's holiest site. So I'm dancing, I'm having a great time, and I feel a hand on my ass. And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Not today, Satan. So, instinct. When I was 15 years old in 1982, I burst into tears, I froze, and I was so ashamed of what happened to me, even though I had done nothing to be ashamed of. And that's a perfectly normal reaction. But I'm now 5-0, 50, and I'm not gonna put up with this shit. And I turned around and I could see who this piece of shit was, who assaulted me, because everyone is dancing in couples and there's one man walking away. So I ran up to him, I tugged his shirt from behind, he fell, I sat on top of him, and I punched, and I punched, and I punched. And every time I thought I was done, I was like, punch, and punch. And every time I punched this piece of shit, I said, don't you ever touch a woman like that again. Don't you ever fucking touch a woman like that again. And then he got up because he wanted to see who this crazy woman was. He looked me in the eyes and he could tell I was seriously crazy. I smacked him across the jaw and he ran away because he knew I was going to beat him up again. So these two events, and then I went to the bar to calm down, and the manager of the club came to me and asked what happened, and he had the audacity to say to me, why didn't you let your husband take care of it? So I said to him, first of all, he's not my husband. Second of all, this is my body. I own this body. I take care of it. And then I went home and I started hashtag I beat my assaulter. And it went viral. So those two moments, Mosque Me Too and I Beat My Assaulter, resulted in this book. Because fuck the patriarchy.
So for those who haven't read the book, to give you, a brief of what these 7 sins are, Mona ended there with, violence. Violence is one of those sins, but so is anger, profanity, ambition, attention-seeking, which was my personal favorite, lust, and power, right? So I would want you to, read and, from your book before, we continue with, the questions. Do you want my copy?
I would love your copy because I left mine in my bag.
Okay.
I can tell you've read my book. All right. So, when I'm in the US or in a more so-called Western context, I read a specific passage about white women and white women who voted for Trump. But I'm going to leave that back home because I'm assuming no one here voted for Trump. Because if anyone here voted for Trump, I will meet you outside. So I'm going to read, because what I do is I try with my readings to make people uncomfortable, because I'm a big fan of discomfort. Because I believe that when you're uncomfortable, your privilege is being questioned. And it's really important to sit in that discomfort and ask why you're uncomfortable. I have had white women come to my talks and say to me, I urge you not to otherize white women. I'm like, what? How the fuck am I going to otherize white women? And then they'll say, well, I'm upset. And I'm saying, well, too fucking bad. Sit in that upset. So I'm now going to make you upset. So this is from the violence chapter. Imagine if we declared war. Imagine if we fuck this shit snapped en masse and systematically killed men. For no reason at all other than for being men. Imagine this culling starting in one country with 5 men a week. Then each week, this imaginary scenario would add more countries and kill more men in each of them. 50 a week, then 100 men, then 500. Imagine an underground movement called Fuck the Patriarchy, FTP for short, which would claim responsibility and warn that it was putting the world on notice that it would keep killing more and more men until the patriarchy sent a representative to talk. We do not want money, it would say. We do not want a new president or a new prime minister to replace the current one, this imaginary claimant of responsibility would say. We do not want a few more seats in parliament. We do not want a pay raise. We do not want men to promise to do the laundry or to promise to babysit their own children. We do not want a few more crumbs. So, patriarchy, send your representative, this imaginary claimant of responsibility would demand. I can imagine the infighting among patriarchy that would ensue. Its ultimatum: begin dismantling patriarchy, or we will continue killing more and more men every week. How many men do you think must be killed before patriarchy begins to be dismantled? 1,000? 10,000? 1 million? Is it barbaric? Is it savage? Many millions of men have been killed in wars begun by men against other men. Imagine this, our declaration of war against patriarchy. How long would it take for the world to pay attention to the killings of men? When would it become a global emergency? A month? 5 months? How many men would have to be killed for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than they were men, for the world to wonder, what the fuck is going on? Who is behind this madness? Who do we talk to so that this savagery can stop? Who do we invade? Who should we bomb? What did men ever do to deserve this barbarity? How many men would have to be killed before the representatives of patriarchy called an emergency summit to bring to a halt the senseless murders of their own? How many men must we kill until we get patriarchy to the table? That is an intentionally disturbing scenario, I know. But we are overdue a fuck this shit snapping. It's as if men have hoarded the operating manual for violence and from boyhood have been taught the language of that manual while girls and women are kept illiterate. Violence, daily acts of violence against women simply for being women, benefits men. Patriarchy's copyright over violence has terrorized us into fear and submission. If every act of violence against women were reported on the news, it would be recognized for the epidemic, the war that it is. Instead, only especially violent acts are reported, and not even all of those, which tells you that society does not care and/or is immune to that violence. A daily war is carried out against women, and yet it's not called barbaric or savage. We are supposed to learn to live with it, accommodate it, and never fight it. Well, enough. Why shouldn't we declare war?
So, Mona, I have a question and, a very brief, answer, or even an estimate. I want to ask you, how many people has feminism killed?
Big fat zero.
But what about, patriarchy? How many women has it killed?
Thank you, Fakria. How many, everyone? Millions! Millions!
So then, when you speak about feminism and the scourge of patriarchy, you speak with such urgency, and I find people referring to you as an alarmist, and it's almost like there isn't an existential threat to the lives of girls and women across the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fakri. I've read this passage at various places, and I've been interviewed on US media, Canadian media, every media you can imagine. And this particular chapter really gets under people's skin. And I've been asked by journalists who are female. They say things to me like, but I'm a mother of boys, and you're asking me to imagine killing my boys? And I say, excuse me, I'm asking you to imagine a scenario of violence while everyday actual violence happens against your girls. Everyday actual acts of violence, not imaginary, happens against women. So look at this. Look at the way patriarchy has socialized us to be more concerned about imaginary violence against men and not the actual violence against women, girls, and queer people. Because in this book, we are all in this together. Women, girls, non-binary people, and queer people, we're in this together. And yet they're upset because I asked them to imagine how many men it would take to dismantle patriarchy. How many men to kill to dismantle patriarchy?
So as a northern Nigerian woman, as a young woman that comes from an ultra-conservative society, I'm forced to ask, this question of how, you're able to reconcile, between, religion and culture, because, oftentimes, it leaves us very conflicted, yeah, because it's not easy to unbind religion from elements of culture, and seeing how blatant misogyny, patriarchy is weaved into all of that. How do you reconcile with that?
Yes. That is a great question, but it's also a question that a cis-het man is never asked. I have never, ever seen a cisgender, heterosexual Muslim man asked, how do you reconcile your religion and your culture? Never. Why is this question only asked to us women? Why are our bodies the battlegrounds between the war, or in the war, between religion and culture? So what I've done is, and I'm 52 years old now, I'm not a young woman, yeah? And whenever I'm asked this question, especially by fellow Muslim women, and many Muslim women come to my events, and they ask me, how do you do this? How do you sit on a stage and say, fuck the patriarchy, and I want lust, and fuck this, and fuck that, and I'm queer, and I'm polyamorous, and all of this? And I say to them, listen, I did not come out of my mother's womb saying, fuck the patriarchy. Even though I like to imagine baby Mona coming out saying, fuck the patriarchy. Today's the worst day in the history of patriarchy because I came into the world. This is not how it happened, It took me years of unchaining myself. And this is what it is, it's an unchaining. You have to liberate yourself from this particular war that they impose just on us women. Because this is not a war that they fight. They being cisgendered heterosexual men. So enough. So what I've done with this book, I began it with Headscarves and Hymens, because Headscarves and Hymens focused specifically on my background as a woman born in Egypt to a Muslim family, and the Middle East and North Africa. And so a lot of women who are also of Muslim background could identify with Headscarves and Hymens. But this book now, I've taken it global. It's not just about being Muslim and just about how I unchain myself from that particular Islam versus culture. This book now is just global patriarchy. So I think that what we have to do is we have to see all of us across the world who are constantly put between this never-ending war between whatever, Christianity and culture, Buddhism and whatever it is, and say, no more, this is not my fight. My fight is to be free. My fight is not to be equal to men, because men are not free. I don't want to be equal to someone who's not free. I want to be free. And anything that hurts women, girls, and queer people, I reject. Anything and everything. Amen.
So, in your book, you talk, strongly about how, you go off on white feminists, and you touch up on a lot of very sensitive cultural and religious issues. So. From comments, from the tweets that people send to you, and even, some of the reviews of your book, I found, women are, always asking you to, why are you being so, intense, that you're breaking off the bridge to having, a discussion with men, sitting down on a table and talking about, patriarchy and finding ways to sort of resolve some of our differences. It's phrased so beautifully, like, okay, we'll come and we'll break bread and we'll talk about our issues, and everyone goes home and all of a sudden, patriarchy is dead. And when young people are talking about being feminists, especially young women, it's like, yes, you can be a feminist, but don't be like Mona. Mona is a radical. Mona is extreme, and to so many other women, young women are dissuaded from being feminists like you. So, what does that, what do you say to these young women that are conflicted on, which scale, what part of the scale they should be on? Is it the extreme or the moderate, or the, those that believe, okay, women are much, inferior to men because of bodily strength and stuff, but, women should, enjoy the opportunity. So those on the far, end of the right.
Okay, anyone who's scared and who thinks I'm too radical and who thinks I'm too extreme, just go to the side, because you're not going to help in the fight. You're a foot soldier of patriarchy, and I don't have time for foot soldiers of patriarchy. And thank you. And the foot soldiers are always the first to be killed. So just go to the side. I want people who are ready to fight. I want warriors. I don't want foot soldiers. I also want people who refuse crumbs, because those who say, well, Mona, you need to be a bit nicer. You need to be politer. You need to sit down and talk and break bread. I will not sit down and talk and break bread with someone who does not recognize my full humanity. I refuse to talk to anyone who's going to give me this nonsense about bodily strength and I don't know what the fuck else. I'm beyond this now. I refuse the crumbs that patriarchy throws me, because there are some women who accept the crumbs. These are the white women who voted for Trump. These are... See, I keep coming back to them because I live in the US. I should read you the passage about the white women. I will. So, but there are also women who are not white who accept crumbs. There are women, Muslim women, who accept crumbs, Christian women who accept crumbs, women all over the world who accept crumbs from patriarchy because it gives them a proximity to the power of patriarchy, and they foolishly think that it will protect them from the violence of patriarchy. All it does is, patriarchy recruits them as foot soldiers to police me, to police you, to police other women, and then when it's time to kill, they're the first to go. So I don't want crumbs. I want the whole cake. I'm greedy. And I don't want patriarchy's cake. I want my own fucking cake. So no more crumbs. And if this is too scary, good, because you're showing your true colors. Go to the side. I don't want scared people. I want warriors, feminist warriors.
So throughout history, women, incredible strong women have been erased, matriarchs. So we're talking about, the women warriors, the women leaders. They've been erased throughout history. And today, and when we look at, how violent feminism was in, centuries and centuries ago, during slavery in the US and all of that. And, today when we sit down and, we're having a conversation with men and, they talk about how radical we are and that we should be able to sort of replicate the feminism of those peaceful women that came out and, protest and, talk, but then are very ignorant of the fact that we might be the least violent feminists that ever lived. So what is the impact of that erasure of women that have fought through blood and tears through centuries and are being erased? What impact does it have on younger women?
Yes, that's a great question. And we don't even have to go that far back in history to see erasure happening. We're seeing that erasure happening as we speak in the various revolutions and uprisings around the world. Whether you're talking about Hong Kong, or you're talking about the revolutions that happened and continue to happen in the Middle East and North Africa, where I come from. I'm from Egypt. Or various protest movements, uprisings, whether in South Africa most recently in Rhodes Must Fall, whether here in Nigeria, whenever you have any kind of protests, everywhere across the world, this is what happens. Protest leaders ask women to come out and join them, and they boast. I mean, you see all these pictures of the Sudanese women who led the revolution, the Tunisian women who led the revolution, the Lebanese women who are leading the revolution in Lebanon, yeah? Give it 5 days. 5 days, and it's time to negotiate, and it's men sitting with men negotiating over our future. Because this is what ends up happening. It becomes a group of men fighting another group of men for a slice of the cake. And I said I want the whole cake. I don't want crumbs.